Next up is Eric Thorvig with the City of Anoka.
Thank you, Jana. Welcome everybody to the City of Anoka. As Jana said, I'm Eric Thorvig, Economic Development Coordinator with the community. And our station isn't too far from where we are at. It's just up 4th Avenue across Highway 10. And our area is about a 93-acre redevelopment area. It kind of gets smaller and expands as we take a look at a few different things. But we have two big projects that have gone on in the past couple of years. The first is the Volunteers of America. And this project was about a $35 million private investment and the largest in the history of the City of Anoka. And that just wrapped up. The independent living portion wrapped up at the end of the year, and people are starting to move in there. It's 58 units. And then the nursing portion, which took a little bit longer, wrapped up this spring, and they just had their grand opening a couple weeks ago. That's 120 beds. So definitely something that we were excited about and kicked off the redevelopment in this area. And we're working with them on a phase 2 just to the east. The city owns another 7 acres just to the east of that, and we're looking to have them go through a site plan approval this fall and potentially start construction on their phase 2 in 2014. And their phase 2 would be more independent apartments, market rate apartments just east of that. Currently underway is our parking ramp, which started construction just about a month ago. And that was a collaboration of entities all the way from the city level to the federal level. There was a lot of people involved with that, both on the funding and approval. And it's a 344 stall parking ramp with a pedestrian overpass that you see at many of the other stations. We anticipate that to be wrapped up in December. And what it does is it allows for us to have development on the north side of the railroad tracks. Our station had parking on both the north and the south side of the track. So what it allows us to do is that ramp's going to go on the south side, and we can open up the north side for redevelopment. We updated our master plan in 2012. We got a grant from the Metropolitan Council, so we put the pretty pictures to our plan, and it allows us to market to developers. We have about 21 different redevelopment sites along or in the area, and we have individual sheets for each of those redevelopment sites, so we can hand a developer sheet and say, here's generally what the city's looking for as far as design, density, and so forth. So it's allowed us to market our sites more accurately. On that note, we are continuing to market our sites. We have about 40 acres of city-owned land in the 93-acre area, so we are a major landholder, and we have one site currently out on the market for sale along the river just across from the Volunteers of America. As we acquire and assemble sites, we'll continue to market those for sale. In 2011, we established a TIF district over the entire 93 acres, so it allows us to do a lot of acquisition, public infrastructure in the area. This area has a long history of industry dating back to the late 1800s, so there's a lot of acquisition that the city needs to step in and do where private development may not come in, and there may be cleanup and other infrastructure things that need to occur as well. Another major project that our engineering department and planning department's been working on over the last year is to establish a whistle-free. As you know, the freight trains have very loud whistles, and to have that whistle-free in place is important for the residential components of the area. So right now we have a nighttime whistle-free in place, and we're working on getting that to a 24-hour, which will then encourage that residential development.
Thanks, Eric. Jim McComb will give us some highlights of the market in the City of Anoka.
The Anoka station has a draw area that has roughly 6,000 people that work in Minneapolis. That's the second highest total in the corridor. 3.2% of those are riders on the Northstar. And as you'll notice, these market capture for ridership will increase as we move further away from the Twin Cities. The demographics, again, because Anoka is an older city, its population, its employment has been decreasing as a result of the recession. Population is decreasing, households have been decreasing modestly, and the average household size has been declining, all of which are relatively normal trends for older communities. I think the Northstar station provides the opportunity to add more households and population to the city, and hopefully younger households. The average household income is $60,113, comparable to Fridley, and is at the low end of the range for the Northstar communities, again, due to its role as an older city, which influences the number of households 65 years and older, which is 20%, comparable to Fridley. The renter-occupied or owner-occupied households have been decreasing modestly. Stable households for renter-occupied, and the percent of renter-occupied units is edging up there. It's 44.3, again, an indication of the demographics of an older community. Average building permits, 2000, 2007 in Anoka was 14. The average for 2008 to 2011 was 13. So they've been able to maintain their housing development over the decline in the housing market. The station area housing potential on an annual basis, 2013 to 2017, between 104 and 112 housing units per year if developers step forward, and decreasing slightly to 98 to 106 in the latter years.
Thank you, Jim. And Jim Prost will give us some comments on these strategies and tools.
It's interesting with a significant, about 40% of the land is owned by the public sector, so there's really an opportunity to work that in terms of partnerships and in terms of land write-downs and in terms of flexibility in how land could be disposed of. There is a little bit of a history in deferring or waiving some impact fees depending upon the nature of the project. I think one thing we're really hearing here is the quality of the projects really influences the nature of the implementation tools. They're trying to create quality projects, and the nature of the project specifically is going to relate to the amount of public sector involvement. And what you have here is you have an older community, you have a very walkable community. We talk about transit advantage in terms of rents, but walkability is another factor. If you look at the National Association of Realtors studies, that the kind of the environment of the older town that Anoka presents really is a good advantage, and you combine that with tax increment financing, the amenities you're developing, the parking, the Riverwalks, revolving loan funds. So it really is kind of the structure to be there. And then again, with the walkability and the amenities, the whole idea of starting to use more transit advantage rents, and we should maybe talk about this in a broader regional context. It's something a community can't do on its own, but really is part of a public-private partnership, both the rail authority and the community and the county and the developers and Met Council all working together. That sounds interesting. All working together to really market this transit advantage so it can be integrated. And finally, the zoning and regulatory modifications. There's really been a lot of cooperation with Volunteers of America and with other developers, and this all involves kind of a strong public support to use a variety of tools in their existing real estate assets to help achieve implementation.
And Joni.
All right. So with the city, as Jim had mentioned, there is really a pretty nice street network in place here. And one of the things that the city would be beneficial is to just fill in those gaps in the sidewalk network that exists today, so that every street that's within a quarter mile of the station, our recommendation would be that you have a sidewalk on both sides of those streets. And for any street that is within that quarter mile to half mile range, that there at least be a sidewalk on one side of each street within that area. The city also has a well-defined trail network within the community. But unfortunately, at this time, the trails themselves don't meet current design standards. So our recommendation would be that as streets are reconstructed throughout the community, that those designated trails be brought up to current design standards. And that, once again, would help with the safety of people who are trying to move through the community and get to the station, as well as wayfinding, to help people understand where these trails are and how they make those connections, those safe connections to the transit station. And then as a last thing, given the fact that on 7th Street here, there's a signalized intersection right here, and that's a very important crossing to get across 7th Street. And then once we get pedestrians across that, then it's a little circuitous of how they would actually get to the station. So our recommendation would be to put a sidewalk, once again, on the north side of that rail corridor to help facilitate that walkability to that pedestrian overpass that's being constructed over the rail. And in addition, when the bridge over, the 4th Street Bridge is reconstructed over the highway, that also include a sidewalk structure to help the folks who are living here south of Highway 10, once again, get across that barrier and be able to safely get to the station.
Thanks, Joni. And Eric will wrap it up with some implementation strategies for the city.
Thanks, Jana. As I mentioned earlier, we're working with Volunteers of America to get that Phase 2 underway, and the big reason for that to get started is it will have another generator for TIF in that area. Right now, we've used all of the TIF that we've gotten from the Volunteers of America to dress up our ramp to make it more Anoka with brick and some other variety of things. So we need that Phase 2 to get started so we can have some money in that pot so we can continue to do some acquisition and cleanup in our redevelopment area. We'll likely need to look at an extension of our 5-year rule for our TIF district. The 5-year rule expires in 2016, so we may have to go to the legislature to get that extended so we can spend our money further out. Continue to market our city-owned sites for sale as we've done. Enhance the public park areas along the Rum River. We have a unique opportunity with the Rum River just adjacent to our entire redevelopment area. So we've had conversations with the DNR about having a little area where you could come down the Rum River, dock your boat, walk a short distance to the train station, and take the train down to a Northstar game or work or something like that. So it's a unique opportunity that we're looking to do in this area. We also have a 300-foot strip along the Rum River that will remain public. So we try to incorporate some of the trails and so forth in that area. We need to relocate our public works facility. As I said earlier, this is an area that's had a history of industry, and we put our public works facility there. It's about a 6-acre site directly adjacent to the station. So we're working with the state of Minnesota to acquire some land just to the north of our redevelopment area to relocate that public works facility. So we then have a site right next to the station that we can have development occur. I think as the other communities have expressed, working with the communities in the Northstar Corridor, we've done a lot of things over the last couple of years with a variety of agencies and entities, and just getting the word out about Northstar is very important. I think as more people realize what the communities have to offer along the corridor, that will only help things. Then as far as this study, as I think a lot of communities have done over the last X amount of years, we've had a lot of studies completed, and this is another one that we see as Anoka as very beneficial from the economic viability. What Mr. Prost has said is that the cities likely need to step in and provide certain incentives to make development happen. As a regulatory entity, cities can change some things related to their TOD zoning. What Anoka has as far as a large landowner is we can do some things such as reduce land costs and so forth to make development happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.